It's your meeting.
Do you want me to do history?
It's up to you.
He's heard the history.
Yes.
Everybody else has not. Do you want me to do the
That's
history?
fine.
Okay. Then I will do the history. And you can take a nap. Mr. Ochoa, you've heard this already.
Paula's going over the history that she's had with the district for the last 5 or 6 years. If we feel it's relevant for what's been happening.
What's occurring now? Okay. I entered the school district in 2006, about December, 2006-2000 school year. Things are pretty good, except that I tried to go on a field trip with my son to some caverns. They had a problem with the service dog on the bus, but I said, you have to allow it by law. It was resolved, no harm, no foul. In 2007, 2008, a teacher, Ms. Mandison, illegally withholds Brianna's report card because of a library book. I didn't think that was correct. I called the Department of Education and they informed me that it was illegal for her to do that. I then contacted the principal and said, you can't do this, I want the report card. The teacher is forced to give the report card when she didn't want to. A matter of 2 weeks later, there was an accident at home and Brianna's glasses were broken. I took her an hour to Stockton the same day to have them fixed. It was unintentional. The teacher was not happy with me, and she called CPS. She did not ask to determine if it was an accident or if it was on purpose, the result of something on purpose. She simply called CPS. CPS came out to my house and found that there was nothing wrong, nothing had occurred. In 2008 and 2009, Mr. White, who was an outstanding principal, he's barely able to keep a lid. I guess talk had gone around. The office staff wasn't real thrilled with me. Some of the teachers were not real thrilled with me. And he managed to keep a lid on them, but they were really disrespectful and dismissive of me. By that time, Brianna had gone up to junior high. I assisted her in doing a presentation about my service dog. The principal there asked me, why is the dog here? And I was glad to answer his questions. In 2009-2010, Mr. White leaves. There is a temporary principal there. The teachers for my son had asked if they could kind of cue him on his personal hygiene. 11 years old, kind of doesn't care about showers. I told them I was working with him, and they asked if they could nicely, have deodorant cue him at school. I said, sure, not a problem. That went on for a while. Towards the end of the school year, my son comes home and says that he needs to kill himself. He needs to die. He shouldn't be on this earth because he's stinky, smelly, nasty. Nobody is ever going to like him. And I say, why do you say that? He said, because the adult said so. And I said, did the adult say that exactly? He said, well, no, but it amounts to that. So I barrel into the office. I tell the principal that her nor her staff will mention another word about my son's hygiene to him, or I will sue them. I absolutely will not have another minute of it. When I said they could help him, I said they could help him, not, emotionally drive him into the ground. They had formerly asked if they could give his medication to him at school, because when they would ask me if I was giving it, and I told them yes. They just chose to assume that I wasn't doing that. So then they moved to have the medication given in the office. I soundly refused that as well at that time. At the same time, we had a bus driver, and she wasn't really on schedule. I mean, not by a minor amount, but a big amount. She was not on schedule. I went to the bus shed and I complained. I need something a little steadier to rely on to get my kids to school, in the morning. I was pretty much dismissed, ignored. The bus driver was told. The bus driver took issue because then I started documenting with a camera when she was arriving and leaving, and she didn't like that. And then I had complained. She started targeting my children. She would threaten to write them up for stuff she let other kids do. She, on 1 or 2 occasions, did write them up for stuff she let other kids do. Worst of all, she started making comments about my son's odor in front of the bus full of kids. It was not long before all the kids picked it up. And then when the CPS worker came in after I yelled at the principal and said, "You will stop this now," a matter of a week later, CPS was called. And I don't even know how to classify what the complaint was. Apparently I was not doing whatever a mother is supposed to do when an 11-year-old boy isn't interested in his hygiene. And it just so happened that that bus driver just happened to be in the office the day the CPS worker showed up to talk to the principal. And she added her 2 cents in that I was a horrible mother and that I wasn't bathing my children as if they were infants. She comes to my house. She finds the house spotless clean, folded laundry on the couch. I had been doing laundry that day. She found it was unfounded. Once again, retaliation for, standing up for myself. In 2010, 2011, my daughter was in the junior high. She had problems with some teachers, Miss Personini and Ms. Glock, yes, the superintendent's wife, giving Brianna a hard time because she had a 504. They wanted to do things their way. And when she let them know, I don't know if they knew before and were trying to avoid the issue or if they didn't know at all. I don't know. She informed them she had a 504. At that point, they had to follow the 504, but they were clearly resentful about it because they started taking little actions in the classroom, like the teacher would go around and pick up certain papers, the certain paper they do. She'd go around and pick it up. She would always conveniently miss Brianna's paper, so Brianna would have to go up to her desk to turn it in, and she'd give her a little bit of a hard time about turning it in at that time. Miss Glock didn't want to accept computer-generated work, and when she had to, she still, gave her a hard time. That same year, which we're getting pretty close up to now, that year, what Miss Personini did is she publicly humiliated my child in front of a whole class of kids to the point where she was crying so hard she could barely breathe. This followed on the heels of the principal, Mr. Murray himself, and Mrs. White. They were tag teaming her, making inappropriate comments. They were picking at her. They weren't, "You did something wrong, we're instructing you," type thing. They're just picking at her. And the lady, she went into the library. Those ladies were picking at her, the adults, not just the children. But when the children saw the adults picking at her, then they picked it up and they started picking at her. She calls me crying so hard she can barely breathe. I say, "I'm coming. Hold on. Stay at the office. I'll come and see what's going on." Half an hour later, after I get some gas, I show up and she is still breathing or crying so hard she can barely breathe. I had to calm her down just to get her so she could talk rationally. I go into the office. I tell Mr. Murray, in no uncertain terms, what I think of his behavior and that of his staff, and that I no longer trust them with my child if they are going to behave like that. I don't trust him with my child, and she is not coming to school the last 3 days. He brought up that there was graduation practice, and I said, "I will bring her in the morning for graduation practice. I will stay throughout, and I will take her home." And he said, "Fine." So that is what I did for the last 3 days. We go to graduation. Everything is fine. Because of this happening, I'm not trusting the adults. I mean, they're not instructing her. They're not behaving professionally with her. They are mad at her, and they're picking at her. In a way adults never should. So I go with her to the dance. I'm at the dance a few minutes. The principal, Mr. Murray, who formerly I asked about my dog, and I told him what, the purpose for my dog. He comes in and says that I need to leave because of the dog. And why? Because the board has policies. And I said, "Well, their policies don't trump federal law. I'm not going." And he said, "If you don't leave, I'm going to call the police." And I said, "Please do." And he did. He had a parent volunteer that was picking at me, harassing me, a couple of various staff members hanging out with her that were picking at me and harassing me. I went outside to collect up the papers that I knew I was going to want to show the police officer. I tried to go back in the building. They stopped me and they say, "We don't want you in the building. You should wait outside." And I said, "I'm not going to do that unless Mr. Murray gives me a signed statement that he wants me to leave because of the dog, wait outside because of the dog, and he signs it and hands it to me. Then I will wait outside." I got dirty looks, of course. I didn't care. I asked, when the police officer comes, can somebody wave to me? Because I was sitting at a bench right near that door. I said, can somebody wave me down and I will come outside and speak to the police officer. They did not do that. I did that so Brianna would not be humiliated or embarrassed or her special day ruined. That was not done. They paraded the officer through the dance looking for me. I waved him down personally, went outside, showed him papers. He turns around and tells Mr. Murray that he must allow me in the dance, that I am legal. Mr. Murray allows me in the dance. The officer leaves. Halfway through, I need to take the dog out to do some business outside. I know what's going to happen. It's not my first rodeo. I tell Brianna, I'm going to step outside with the dog to take care of business. You know the drill. You know what probably is going to happen. She sits by the door and watches the door carefully. I come back with the dog. I knock at the door. The doorkeepers, which is that parent organizer, and some of the staff ladies are right that far from the door. There's a window in the door. I knock at the door. They pretend not to know that I am there. But Brianna, which is some distance farther away, can hear me knock and can see me through the window, and she watches them ignore me. So finally, she goes towards the door to open the door to allow me in. They give her dirty looks to warn her off, authoritative dirty looks. So she turns to go to the other door. When she does that, I have squished up against the wall where they can't see me from the window. Welcome to my life. It's fun. I squished up next to the wall where they can't see me out of the window. Because if they don't see me, perhaps when somebody else walks up, they're going to open the door. Because understand, by now, they have my daughter that they have already somewhat abused. I don't trust them with my daughter, and they have her locked in a building away from me. This is not going to happen. So I wait there. When she goes towards the other door, they don't see me. They wonder where I've gone. They open the door. And at that point, I came away from the wall, put my hand on the door so they couldn't shut it, and I said, thank you very much. And I start going through the door. The parent organizer steps farther into the doorway to try to block me with her body. I'm not having it. I push through anyway. So then the door shuts. I go sit down quietly, and I'm in a corner away from the dancers, away from the kids. I try to stay out of the way. She comes over and starts yelling at me that I shoved her, I pushed her, I have no right to be getting physical with her. I didn't do anything for this dance. I didn't help organize this dance. I have no business at this dance. So I was harassed. And then I think it was her husband, walked by a couple times giving me very dirty looks. So I was harassed the rest of the night. I go to the superintendent. He says all the nice and right things and doesn't do anything. No surprise. So 2011, 2012, we're here. So Brianna's at the high school. We go to the high school. She needs her 504 updated. At the very beginning of the year, just a routine thing, I asked for her 504 to be updated to have a meeting. Right a day or two before the meeting, the vice principal says that she doesn't want my service dog at the meeting. And furthermore, she really doesn't want my service dog in any of the buildings. So I'm like dumbfounded. I go home. I finally decide my two options at this point is to push through like I did with Brianna and do what I want to do anyway, or to let them have their way. I'm getting sick and tired of this. I just said she can have her way. I'm not going to go to the meeting. So they showed up for the meeting. I was not there. Later on, she called me and said, why were you not at the meeting? And I said, you told me that, the dog wasn't welcome. If the dog can't come, I can't come. I have the dog for a reason. Oh, well, you could have brought the dog. It's okay. You should have known. How should I have known? She made it very clear I wasn't welcome and didn't make it very clear at all that she had changed her mind. So we rescheduled this 504 meeting, and this goes on and on. I rescheduled the 504 meeting. We have the 504 meeting, and Ann Roth and a couple of people talked to my dog before and after talked to my mom before and after the meeting about my dog. We have the meeting. It's a nice meeting. Ann Roth says she needs to do some more testing on my daughter. Could I bring her to the school for testing? And I say, sure. We make an appointment for the next morning to bring my daughter to the school for testing. I show up with my daughter. I want to go with my daughter to her testing. Ann Roth says, you cannot go. And I'm like, well, why can't I go? Oh, well, because of the dog. I'm like, because of the dog? Well, we have a child with allergies in our class. Oh, I'm like, poor baby, he goes into anaphylactic shock. That must be horrible. Well, no, not that bad, but he's got allergies. You can't go. I said, well, maybe we could go into just a different room, so we don't bother him. No, you can't go. So I can call the police and make a big snit fit on campus and embarrass my daughter further in front of what is going to be her peers or should be her peers. I decide, no, I'm not going to do that. I just will let this one ride. The superintendent asked that I write him a letter about what's going on because the vice principal is otherwise not behaving very well. So I dropped that off at the superintendent's office. I have the secretary notify him that morning what Ann Roth did. So we get transferred to Northstar eventually because she is having more severe problems. Meanwhile, my son, he rides a bus home. On his bus, the kids were bullying him because of his disability. And it gets worse than that. The bus driver was participating and initiating some of this bullying. So I had to deal with that, his problems on his bus, his emotional state, having to deal with these problems on this bus. Nobody in the district listens to me or takes me seriously. So I'm on my own here. So then I'm over here at Northstar, and that is where this meeting begins.
This was as related in an IEP meeting in 2012, but things occurred after that, even still. Brianna went on to be with Mr. Turner, and that worked out well, very well. And things calmed down for Brianna over at Northstar. But things fired up when Ian went to Argonaut in 2013-2014 school year. There, he was targeted and harassed and abused by several staff members. Primarily, it started as one staff member who decided she didn't like him, and the other staff members allowed themselves to be influenced by what she had to say, and she would lie to them. It spread to the principal, and Ian was mentally and emotionally destroyed, and he developed PTSD over about 6 months over at Argonaut High School. Eventually, he was also moved to Mr. Turner, and while he was scared and resistant, Mr. Turner eventually won him over. But that wasn't the end of it then either. Brianna, in 2015, about the time school was getting ready to get out, she went to college night at Amador High School. Tracy Brown was at that presentation. She came in after we came in, and she sat about 3 tables away. At one point, I left to go to the bathroom, and when I did, Tracy made some very loud public comments about how I was nasty, my service dog was nasty, we were bad people, and it was quite loud enough to carry over to my daughter 3 tables away. Countless people heard her. When I filed a complaint, Glock just asked her if she did it. She said no. She had the child with her, the teenager with her, say that she didn't say anything, and nobody did anything. Since it's continued at Northstar with Mr. Turner, there's been 0 problems. 0 problems. Nobody bothers us. We don't bother anybody else. It has been serene and congenial. There's been the occasional dirty look from Tracy Brown, but we just try to ignore that. Ian has gone without his socialization. He was just starting to bloom socially at Argonaut High School. He was just starting to get friends. He was just starting to fit in. That was ripped from him. I pushed the school to provide socialization, and I got a whole lot of nothing. He's been permanently damaged. I don't think he's ever going to quite come back from all of this. But so far, it's quieted down, and I'm hoping to keep it that way. Brianna's graduated now, and Ian is within about 30 credits of being graduated, and at this point, I just want to get him graduated and get us all out of there. The retributions continued. I had CPS called on me for retribution after this. I want to kick free to where they can't hurt me anymore. They can't try to hurt me or bully me anymore. But that's a quick rundown of what had happened since that IEP meeting. It didn't stop. Every year it just continued. Somebody and something new. Thanks.